U.S. in turn asked the Kurds not to turn to Russia. Shortly thereafter, the U.S. moved its troops out of the way this week. Turkey launched an offensive against Kurds in northern Syria. Turkey considers the Kurds a terrorist group, but the same Kurdish fighters had been helping the U.S. battle ISIS in the area. We've got full coverage of this story. Barbara Starr is at the Pentagon. Arwa Damon is along the border between Turkey and Syria. And CNN military analyst Colonel Cedric Layton also with us. So, Barbara, let me begin with you on your exclusive reporting here. Tell us about these conversations, the documents that recognize the verbal sparring over what's at issue here.
You are leaving us to be slaughtered. That is the headline here, Frederica. General Mazloum, the head of the SDF, the Syrian fighters that the U.S. found so valuable to be allied with in the fight against ISIS, now under attack by Turkish forces, a NATO ally. The U.S. not willing to get in the middle of any of this and continue to support the Kurds. So on Thursday, there was a meeting between General Mazloum, the military leader of the Syrian Democratic Forces, and a top State Department official. I just want to read you direct quotes. They are stunning from an internal administration document that summarized the meeting. So first, General Mazloum says to the State Department official, "You have given up on us. You are leaving us to be slaughtered. You have nothing for us. You are not willing to protect the people, but you do not want another force to come and protect us. You have sold us. This is immoral." General Mazloum goes on. He is furious. He says, and I quote further, "I need to know if you are capable of protecting my people, of stopping these bombs falling on us or not. I need to know, because if you are not, I need to make a deal with Russia and the regime now and invite their planes to protect this region." Bombs are falling on General Mazloum's people, and he wants them protected. I want to tell you that I traveled to northern Syria earlier this year. I have met General Mazloum. He is one of the most articulate and passionate defenders of his people, of the Kurds in northern Syria. And even as this is going on, for now at least, Kurdish fighters are still guarding thousands of ISIS detainees in Syria, ISIS detainees that the U.S. does not want to see on the loose. But these Kurdish fighters will not wait forever. They are going to fight. They are going to move north, according to all accounts, and fight to protect their towns, their villages, their families, fight to protect their people, and ally themselves with the Assad regime or Russia if the U.S. will not help them. Fred?
And so, Barbara, what is the response coming from the Pentagon, from the Department of Defense, that this kind of interaction, communication, is now being aired out publicly?
Well, we had a lengthy briefing yesterday from the Defense Secretary and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They were very adamant that they want to see Turkey stop its military campaign, its air and artillery strikes against northern Syria. But they also are very clear that the U.S. is not going to get involved in this. First thing, important to remember, Turkey's a NATO ally. There's just simply no way the U.S. is going to war against a Turkish ally. They continue to say that they had to move those U.S. troops back from northern Syria because the Turks were coming in no matter what, and they could not leave those troops at risk. But I think one of the bottom line things to remember here is that President Trump continued to talk to the Turkish leader, President Erdogan of Turkey, and President Trump either didn't have the juice to convince the Turks not to do this or wasn't strong enough in saying how opposed the U.S. would be to it. And so now these Kurdish allies on the ground are left to their own devices, essentially. They will fight. The U.S. assessment is these are very good fighters. They will fight back against the Turks. We could see a guerrilla movement developing in northern Syria in the coming months. They are not going to fold and go away. There is a deeper implication. The U.S. military always tries to fight with its allies, with local forces on the ground. The U.S. military doesn't fight alone. And this is being watched around the world, and it is being watched that the U.S. military, under political direction, had to turn its back. Fred?
Barbara Starr, we'll check back with you from the Pentagon. Thank you. Arwa Damon is along the Syrian-Turkey border. Arwa, you know, the Turkish Defense Ministry says they have taken control of their first major city in its incursion into northern Syria. As this Kurdish city falls, what are you hearing from Kurds, from people on the ground about what's unfolding here?
Well, ever since this offensive began, and that town that Turkey is saying that it controls is actually just in the distance there. We can see it from our vantage point here in Turkey. But this entire offensive from its first day forced hundreds of thousands of civilians living on the Syrian side of the border deeper into Syrian territory because they are terrified as the Turkish forces advance, as the bombardment continues. They don't know where to go, and they don't know if they're going to be able to come back home. Now, from Turkey's perspective, the Syrian Kurdish fighting force on the other side of this border, the YPG, is a terrorist organization, and that is because it is an offshoot of the separatist group, the PKK, that has been battling the Kurdish state for decades. And the PKK is not just designated a terrorist organization by Turkey, it's also designated a terrorist organization by the US and by the EU. So from the beginning, Turkey has been confounded as to why its NATO ally America would essentially ally itself with its arch enemy inside Syria. And Turkey, from the beginning of that allegiance, has been warning the US. Turkey has been wanting and asking the US for this safe zone. They had actually begun, both countries had begun joint patrols along these areas as part of an agreement, but Turkey ran out of patience. At least that's what the government says, and they decided to go this alone. And no matter what happens, they're not going to back down, and the consequences have been devastating. The consequences for civilians inside Syria have been devastating, and the consequences for the civilian population along this border, which further to the east, incidentally, is members of Turkey's Kurdish ethnic minority. So you have relatives on both sides of this border who are coming under fire. They are also extraordinarily worried, and it's very unlikely that this conflict is going to remain neatly contained to just this border region.